1. One morning I was just finishing breakfast. The B&B offered full English breakfast as standard. Sausage, bacon, eggs, tomato, baked beans, mushroom, etc. Along with the usual toast, croissant, cereals, and juice. I usually just got toast because a full cooked breakfast would just make me want to go back to bed. Anyway, the B&B owner did the breakfast cooking, and he was popping in and out of the kitchen to check in the guests and take orders when the doorbell went. It was new guests arriving. Check-in times were 2 p.m. at the earliest, because checkout was 11 a.m., and that would give him time to get the rooms cleaned. We could hear him explaining this. It was all in the paperwork and on the website, and times had been clarified at booking. The new arrivals kept arguing that they wanted their luggage somewhere. Why couldn't they leave it in their room? Because it's not their room yet, other guests were still using it. David, the B&B owner, tried to explain there wasn't space to leave their luggage other than in the dining room, and that was a public area. And then they came marching into the dining room. 4 adults and 4 children or teenagers. They asked where they should sit for breakfast. David explained that the breakfast was included after a night's stay, not before. And according to his records, only 2 adults and 2 children were booked in, not 4. At this point, some of the other guests were leaving. We're British, we aren't good with people making a public spectacle. It's like second-hand embarrassment. So the adults began moving tables together. David asked them to stop.
But we're hungry. We were told breakfast was included. You owe us a breakfast for making us wait for our rooms.
He said they could have coffee, but he had to insist the tables remained where they were. This wasn't good enough. The children and teenagers started whining about wanting breakfast and started attacking the self-serve buffet area, where cereals, pastries, and yogurts were set out. David asked them to stop, and if they continued, he would have to increase their room rate, and they laughed, saying,
"We're not staying here."
It turned out that only one family of 2 adults and 2 children were staying overnight before setting off on holiday the following day. And they'd met up with friends, the other 2 adults and 2 children, who told them to come and get free breakfast at the B&B. One of the adults started bitching about the room rate and how it was so expensive that they deserved to get unlimited food. And the owner had been so unwelcoming and was so rude as to order them around that they deserved money off the bill. Then they started chuntering about leaving bad reviews on certain well-known travel websites, so he should make it up to them. All of this took less than 5 minutes, start to finish. It ended when David picked their luggage up and put it outside and told them to check their terms and conditions, which included a good behavior clause. One of the other guests asked if he should phone the police. One of the women burst into tears, saying her holiday had been ruined, and she was going to sue for the cost of the cruise that she wouldn't enjoy. And one of the teenagers threw a yogurt against the wall. The other guest got his phone out and said he would be happy to give the police a witness statement that this rabble was assaulting the owner, lots of shouting, threats of noise, but they ended up getting locked out. At breakfast the next day, David told me they had come back at 2 p.m. expecting to check in as normal, and weren't happy that he'd cancelled their booking because of their behavior. He said guests like that were the type that would deliberately wreck the place and then demand money off because the place was wrecked. Who the hell would be a small business owner and deal with the general public? 2. I would never dismiss the therapeutic value of venting. And for those of us lurkers who aren't in the hospitality biz, the stories of the outrageous demands and stupid actions of some guests are real eye-openers. But for one little story, I'd like to focus on the flip side of the coin, and ask about the lengths you've gone to assist good guests. For some background, I'm a confirmed middle-aged bachelor from the US, who moved to northern Italy a decade ago to teach English. Previous experience in service industries. Spent too much of my young adult life as a starving artist, which is to say waiter. Also worked for a large bookstore chain where a not uncommon customer question might be,
"Do you have the book they were talking about on Oprah yesterday? I forget the title and the author, but it's got a blue cover."
Also me, in no way God's gift to hotel front desk people, just a polite, undemanding solo traveler who understands that things don't always run like clockwork. Just like in my life. The city in question. My super happy fun place, about 2.5 hours down the train tracks from my home, is a city known for being pricey and ridiculously over-touristed. But I find it a remarkable, enchanting city nonetheless. Since most of the tourist hordes stick to the same beaten paths, it's easy enough to escape them. And since most construction in the city seemed to stop in about the year 1450, even the places the tourists don't go are very interesting. There are certain unique qualities to this city that make it relaxingly tranquil even during high season. I doubt I'll ever get tired of visiting it. The hotel. I researched the heck out of this city, searching for a hotel that hits that sweet point of value and location, not overly concerned with amenities, and came across a small, centrally located, family-run hotel that maybe offers the least expensive private rooms in town. Well, not just in town, but possibly in any touristy city in Italy. Nothing fancy, 2 stars, meaning it has no lift, and rooms with or without a bathroom. But clean and friendly. They also own a floor in a nearby building that is run like a B&B with no front desk or on-site management presence. The combination of low train fare and low room price makes Super Happy Fun Place the least expensive place for me to visit, which shocks even my Italian friends, given my utter enjoyment at merely being in this city means it has literally been years since I've traveled anywhere else in Italy. I know what I like, and I like what I know. In a good year, I'll visit this hotel 3 or 4 times a year, or 3 or 4 nights per visit. And that's been the case, for about 8 years. They know me on sight, and I know them. The gruff but kind owner, his wife the retired English teacher, the daughter-in-law who's now the main front desk person during the day, and her husband who occasionally fills in. Last year wasn't a good year, maybe you noticed. In Europe, Italy was hit first and worst by COVID. Even in August, which is the month when everyone in Italy takes their holiday, and when there was a summer dip in deaths and infections, some hotels remained closed or weren't open 7 days a week. I hadn't been to my Super Happy Fun Place for about a year, and decided I'd make up for it by spending a week there. Called the hotel, spoke to the daughter-in-law, chatted a bit, not too long. These days, they don't even ask for a credit card number. They know if I reserve, I'll be there. And of course, it's family-run, so they can make up the rules as they go. Turns out the hotel was among those not open 7 days a week, so even in normal times, the hotel locks its front door at midnight, and warns guests that if they're going to make a late night of it, they'll need a key to the back door, which the hotel happily provides on request. When I was checking in, the daughter-in-law explained the situation and said I could stay in either the hotel or the annex for 7 nights. But if I chose the hotel, I would not just be the only guest, but the only person in the hotel overnight for 2 nights. I think she was subtly trying to steer me to the annex, but the hotel was more convenient from my perspective. Fewer and less steep stairs than the annex, closer to the nearby square and the public ashtrays therein. Yes, I'm a smoker, but Super Happy Fun Place is not my ashtray. So she handed me the keys to the room and the back door, and I settled in for a week. The 2 nights alone were fun. I was a little paranoid the first night, worrying that something out of the ordinary would happen, but nothing did. I was also a bit worried about the insurance implications if something went wrong. But they're a hotel, and if someone is staying there, even only one person, that means they're open by definition. A similar situation arose the first and only time I visited this year so far. I wanted a long weekend, including a Monday night, but again, even though the hotel is still not open on Mondays, I was told no problem. Though this time, I was steered toward the annex without a choice. That's okay, the rooms are bigger. All of which is a highly roundabout way of asking, what are some of the nicer benefits you or your property has bestowed on guests who are trusted, loyal, or maybe just decent human beings? 3. Getting ready for a cross-country US motorcycle trip with 4 friends, and I remembered one of my best hotel experiences and wanted to share it. The year was 2010, and my wife had given me a week to run around on my bike. My friend and I, from Massachusetts, decided to run the Blue Ridge Parkway. Due to not knowing how much we were going to ride each day, we don't make reservations. We just roll into town and try to find a nice but not too expensive place to stay. One night, on our way south, we stop in a city in North Carolina. We pull into the parking lot of a small inn known for holiday services and also delicious free breakfasts. We call a few places to get a feel for how much we need to spend, and finally call the desk at the inn. Long story short, they won't price match over the phone, but will if we show up in person. We pull our bikes forward a few feet and walk inside. The person working the desk was surprised and laughed and gave us a great rate on the room. She also let us know that we could park our 2 bikes under the overhang, which was really nice. The next morning she greeted us at breakfast and let us know that there were towels available to wipe down the bikes. This was amazing. They kept older towels in a tub at the desk, and we could use them to wipe the morning dew and yesterday's dead bugs off of our bikes and seats. I've never seen this before, but it was a very small town and much appreciated gesture. Maybe some other folks had used nicer towels from the room and ruined them, but this was great. When we checked out, she told us to stop by on our way home, and she would help us out on the room rate again. I told her we would like that, but didn't know if we would hit this town again. As it turns out, a few days later, heading north back towards home, we ended our day in the same town. We headed straight to the Inn of Holidays and asked for a room. A different person was working the desk, and he wouldn't price match. We did not drop the name of the person who helped us previously. The last thing we wanted to do was get her in trouble. She was truly the best. Long story short, the price for that night was too steep for our budget. We sadly went to another property for the night. After checking in at some forgettable place, we decided to grab dinner at a sandwich shop. A few minutes later, we have our food and my friend says, "You won't believe who just walked in." I had my back to the door and figured he was joking around, as we don't know anyone in North Carolina. Turns out it was the person who checked us in at the inn a few days earlier. She was there to meet her sister and parents for dinner. She recognized us immediately, came over, and asked if we were staying at her hotel. We had to break the news that we were staying at another place. She was genuinely disappointed. Turns out she's the assistant manager and had repeatedly told the clerk on duty to call if anyone comes in asking for discounts, but he never did. He said it was fine. I mean, sure, the other place had a dampness and odor issue, and no free breakfast and no towels in the morning for our bikes, but that was all okay. Long story short, great hotel in North Carolina was super nice, and we somehow bumped into the gracious and awesome AM on our way back home at a sandwich shop. I know there has been so many terrible and cranky people coming to your properties. Please know that the folks who hunkered down through COVID, a big trip was supposed to be last year, are now getting back out and traveling again. I hope to see some of you later this month. We're riding out from Massachusetts, San Diego, Montana, Wyoming, to visit some national parks, and then heading back east. Thanks for all you do. 4. I no longer work at this hotel, but I'm still in contact with my coworkers there. This particular hotel had a specific corporate partner that would bend over backwards for whenever any of their members would stay with us. Most of the time, this just meant making sure they got the room they requested, drink vouchers for our restaurant bar, free breakfast vouchers pre-COVID, and a coffee station set up just for them. This corporate partner had guests staying with us quite often. Some of them were lovely and would have some nice chats with the hotel staff. Some were absolutely entitled and were insanely upset if something went wrong. This story involves a second group. One week, we noticed we had a lot of guests with a specific corporate code. Our GM let us know that there was some kind of meeting or convention in town, luckily not at our hotel, so a lot of those guests were staying with us. The problem with this is that many of the guests had specific room requests. As mentioned before, we try and bend over backwards to accommodate. Unfortunately, there were at least 4 guests that even specified the same room number. Our hotel had 4 floors, and generally these guests want the 4th floor facing the front. Mind you, no matter where you look from this hotel, there isn't that nice of a view. You're either looking at our parking lot and a chain restaurant in the front or a strip mall in the back. But for some reason, these guys all wanted the front. As you can imagine, there are a limited number of king rooms facing the front on the top floor, so we blocked who we could. And we chose the person with the highest loyalty for that specific room that was requested. When it was check-in time, one of the guests that had requested this specific room walked up to my desk and started the check-in process. He was very nice, at first. I got his name, saw we had blocked him in a 3rd room floor facing the front, even though he was one of the ones that requested that specific 4th floor room. I informed him of this, and his demeanor immediately changed. He started yelling,
"Don't you see who I'm with? I stay here all the time with this room,"
etc. I informed him that we had many guests this week with his organization, and we did our best to accommodate him. So then I asked him if he would rather a 4th floor room facing the back. Like a child, he just repeated,
"4th floor, facing front."
over and over again. Since I couldn't just spontaneously add on an addition, and he was one of the last people to check in, this was impossible. So very calmly I said, if you choose to stay here, you can have a 3rd floor room facing the front, or a 4th floor room facing the back. That's all we have left. He ended up calling for the front desk manager, who told him the same thing. He ended up settling for the 3rd floor front-facing room in the end, and gave us dirty looks every time he passed the front desk. He also demanded extra drink tickets, and got them, of course. 5. About 15 years ago, I had a job with a hotel chain in their reservations division. The job was fine, but the managers were petty and seemed to justify their existence by finding issues when there weren't any. One day in July, I get a call from a woman that says she's from Toronto and needs to find a room for the night because her house just burned down. Okay, no problem, I can help. So I call our group lead, Chuck, and explain to him what's going on because us regular employees are not allowed to call out of the office. So Chuck makes the call to Toronto and explains the situation to them. He gets the okay to charge just $72 for the room, which is about $100 off the regular room rates. He also told the woman can book up to 3 nights and then she can work with the hotel staff if she needs longer. All the hotel requires is an ID to prove the woman is from Toronto. They don't need proof her home burned down or anything. They're willing to take her at her word so long as she has a Toronto address. Great, so I thank Chuck and get back to the woman. I tell her how she just needs ID and then she can get a rate of $72 a night, telling her I can book her for up to 3 nights. She says that's wonderful and would like to use that rate for the hotel's New Year's Eve ball. I'm so confused I sit there for a few seconds before muttering, "What?" The woman immediately grows incredulous and explains what a New Year's Eve ball is to me. I tell her I know what New Year's is, but it's July. She says yes, and she wants to save the room rate and apply to the New Year's ball. I tell her she can't. She argues, "You never said the room rate couldn't be used on New Year's. I want to use it on New Year's, or that's false advertising." No, it's not. You said your house burned down today and needed a room because you had nowhere to go. Unless your house is going to burn down on New Year's again, it's pretty clear we're talking about now, tonight. She gets very upset and starts screaming. That's when a man picks up another line to join the conversation and demands to know who the hell I am. I explain that I'm with the hotel and tell him I'm trying to find him a room because I think his house burnt down and they needed somewhere to stay. I say think because I'm seriously having doubts now. For those unfamiliar with landlines, you could hook up any number of phones to a line. Then anyone who picked up a phone connected to that one landline would be on the call. You're on the phone in your bedroom? I can pick up the phone in the kitchen and listen in. You need to talk to a husband and wife? Well, he can get on the phone in the living room, and she'll get on the phone in the kitchen, and you can talk to them both. So the fact that the husband could just pick up and jump in immediately means it had to be a landline. If their house burned down, how did they have a landline to jump on? Where were they staying now? So I asked the husband if his house burned down. His response was filled with homophobic slurs. Okay, now understand, he's not screaming. He's saying it in a low voice like he doesn't want anyone to hear him. And he's saying it in a very calm manner. So I started laughing. It was so weird and funny I just couldn't help it. The man gets more upset because I'm laughing and demands to know why. I'm still laughing as I mutter, "Because you're right." I should point out here in the story that I'm gay. So yeah, he was right. I then informed the guy I have to terminate the call due to abusive language and hang up. Chuck asks me how everything went after he sees I'm off the call. I tell him what happened. The calls are recorded, so he finds the call and listens. He is just as confused as I was when he hears a woman demand the low rate for New Year's. I tell him to keep listening because her husband jumps on and starts cussing me out. Chuck listens and looks disgusted. Then he hears me say to the dude that he was right, and Chuck loses it. He's laughing out loud with tears rolling down his cheeks. He can't believe I said that to them. So the woman and her husband file a complaint against me later that day for hanging up on them. They say they just called for help and I was rude, refused to help and hung up on them. My managers listen to the call and decide to write me up. When they call me into the office, I'm confused because the couple clearly lied. I did try to help, called Chuck, got a lower rate, and I only hung up after the guy insulted me several times. Policy states that if a customer swears, you can terminate the call. So how am I being written up? For non-service to customers because I never tried to call the hotel back to ask if the lower rate could be applied to the New Year's Eve ball. Since my refusal to call the hotel back is what prompted the customers to cuss me out, it was my fault. The office I worked at closed a few years after I left. They switched to a completely remote work environment. The management team had to take a pay cut and demotion to stay on with the company, since their roles were obsolete. Not sure what happened to them since, but I hope they're all stuck in a dead-end job, where their performance gets nitpicked by a petty manager. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Coahw, episode 65. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Also, a shout out goes to the author of story number 4, Reddit user LilRobin87. Thank you very much, LilRobin87, for allowing us to use your story. If you liked the video, then please do boop the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, then please do share the video about. I'm starting to melt. It's getting too hot here. I don't even think the temperature's super high. It's just always hotter upstairs, isn't it? Apparently we have sunny weather today. And I'm hoping to get work done. I'm recording this on Friday, early morning Friday. About to go for a sleep, nap, well, possibly a bit of both. I'm hoping to get done early so I can just be lazy and forget about everything for the weekend. Take a few days off from being me. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.